This has been a busy fucking week, my friends. I didn't know when I was going to put up my next review, but I guess that when has finally come. So, in this review, I'm talking about Extinction, which is a low budget zombie apocalypse movie in which. Hey, where are you going? Okay, I know that doesn't sound very promising at all, but just bear with me for a moment. You might find this interesting. Anyway, Extinction follows this guy who has been raising a little girl for 10 years. A decade ago, the zombie apocalypse happened, which wiped out most of humanity, and then right after that, this was immediately followed by a second ice age, which made the zombies disappear. However, it is soon discovered that the dead have evolved to survive in the cold, and they're still roaming the land in search of blood. Now, the setup of having these zombies which are able to evolve, I know sounds pretty cheesy because it is. It sounds like the type of thing you'd see in a sci fi original movie, but as it turns out, this film is a bit more mature than one might expect. It turns out that this movie is very heavily character based. A good portion of the running time is spent simply getting to know the characters as people. You see a lot of the process of how this guy is spending time with the little girl and trying to raise her right, and also being very protective of her, while in the meantime, like a lot of kids, this girl is trying to grow up a little too fast and trying to become her own independent person. And there's also this guy living right next door to them who has a connection to these people, but for some reason, which you'll find out later in the movie, the guy has a very hostile attitude towards him. But there are really no clear cut villains here. It's just people dealing with things in a manner that they see fit. Really, everyone in this movie comes off as fairly believable. I mean, I was able to buy their motivations all the way through, even in the case of the little girl. Like I said, she's just like most kids, and there was never really a point where she started getting on my nerves. Also, the zombies in this movie are pretty damn scary. They look awesome. I found the science behind their evolution to be genuinely interesting, and once they finally start popping up in the film, it does lead to some pretty intense scenes. Unfortunately, however, I did find this movie to be a little too long. I mean, if I recall correctly, I believe Extinction runs for close to 2 hours, and I mean, whereas in a Tarantino film, the characters are so interesting that I'm perfectly comfortable with spending even 3 hours just watching them, the characters in this movie were believable and they were likable enough to where I didn't want to see anything bad happen to them, but honestly, they were not interesting enough to hold my attention for that long. I will admit that every single small, seemingly insignificant moment does lead to something happening in this movie, and it does further the plot in a way. But honestly, I think that this would have been a little bit better if it had been closer to 90 minutes, and if they had rearranged the scripts so that those plot developments could have happened in a faster manner. It even gets predictable at a certain point. I mean, I mentioned that the guy next door has a connection to the two leads, which I'm not going to spoil for you, but if you do end up seeing this movie, I will let you know that you're going to see that connection coming from a mile away, and it's nothing mind blowing. I'll admit that the movie has a pretty good final act going for it. It's very action packed, very suspenseful, very well shot during the last 30 minutes, and just for the record, that's not when the zombies finally start showing up. They do so long before that. But really, I think that, this final act would have had more of an impact on me if the film hadn't been dragging its feet for so long beforehand. In conclusion, Extinction is not a horrible movie by any means. It's certainly not nearly as bad as it could have been. I just think it's okay. So, really, if you have some interest in seeing this movie, I'd say go ahead and give it a shot. Hopefully, you'll enjoy it more than I did. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about this movie. I hope you all have a good one.